Hi everyone, Caoimhin here from MTU's Blackrock Castle Observatory. In this video we are going to take a look at how Venus is going to come up into the sky, very similar to how we took a closer look at Mercury a couple of weeks ago. But we are also going to talk about these other things that are coming up into the sky as we get later, like Scorpius, like Libra, and the other objects that come along with these constellations. But first we will come back just a little bit closer to sunset so we can see Venus. Now, of course, with the horizon that I have here, and I may have mentioned this before, this is very close to the Beaujolais Mountains in France. This is where this image comes from, even though we do always look at the sky as it would appear from here in Ireland. So there's Venus, just after coming out from behind that tree there at almost 10 o'clock. So we do need to wait pretty late to get our view of Venus, simply because we're getting close to summer, the sun isn't setting until that late, and we always see Venus reasonably close to the sunset. So we can see Venus very clear and very bright there as we come to the end of next month, when it will be even further into the sky. Now, Venus moves a lot slower than Mercury, so we have much more time to take a look at Venus. We've far greater opportunities. Mercury, it's going to be leaving the sky very soon, so it is still there here on the 21st if you want to get a closer look at it, but Venus is going to be the mainstay of our evening sunset sky over the next couple of weeks. And we can take a look at how it moves, very similar to how we observed Mercury's motion. So we will take away the atmosphere, which gets rid of that orange-yellow sunset glow, and we're going to move through a few days here as we come into the future now. It's going under the ground, so we'll get rid of the ground too, and we'll just see how Venus moves as it comes towards us. So here, our half Venus, this is our greatest elongation, the same way we had the greatest elongation of Mercury, but this isn't happening for another couple of months. So we have plenty of time before Venus reaches its greatest elongation, and then plenty more time before it comes back around in front of the sun. Now, it does look like Venus is getting quite close here, and of course it is. When Venus is between us and the sun, it's closer to us than any other planet. It's even closer to us than Mars. So going to Mars on a rocket ship, depending on the rocket ship that you're using, it can take, from 6 months to a year. Going to Venus takes closer to 6 months or even 3 months, again, depending on the rocket ship you're using and how quickly you're trying to get there. So Venus is closer to us, but we can also see all of this really thick atmosphere full of sulfur and hydrogen sulfides and all of these other nasty things, loads of carbon dioxide, loads of carbonic acid, sulfuric acid, all the kind of things that we don't really enjoy. Now, of course, there were signs recently of a phosphine gas in Venus, so we don't want to completely wipe out the possibility of finding something alive on Venus in the future, or at least in the atmosphere of Venus. But certainly it's not a nice planet for us. Mercury, of course, too small, doesn't have an atmosphere. Venus's atmosphere really helps it reflect an extra bit of light. Of course, Mercury is even closer to the sun, but it is much smaller and less reflective. Mars, with its incredibly thin atmosphere and very, very rare does it have any sort of clouds, and even when it does have clouds, they're normally dust clouds, so Mars also reflects far less light than Venus. Jupiter, being a gas giant with a lovely thick atmosphere, reflects loads. So different planets will reflect different amounts of light, and how close they are to the sun and how close they are to us and how big they are, it all influences how bright they appear in the sky. Now we are, after moving a little bit later, we're almost at midnight. We'll push all the way to midnight. Nice round number. So we're here around midnight, just after passing into the 22nd, and we have the upper part of Scorpius and Libra here. If we start moving into a darker sky, well, on the 21st, we may not, we'll notice a little, not too much. We're starting to see the glow of the Milky Way there. But of course, with the light of the moon, it's not going to be perfect. The light of the moon, just like light pollution from the city, can affect how much is visible in the sky. Give it another week or so and the moon will be out of the way and the Milky Way looks amazing here. The only problem is this is after midnight, and if we push just a little bit earlier, even looking that far into the future, even in the darkest parts of the countryside, we're waiting until after 11:30 before the Milky Way becomes visible, and then it's there and it's lovely and it stretches across the sky, and then the sun starts to rise at about 3 o'clock in the morning and it starts to disappear again. It's gone by here at 3:30. So because it is the summer, we don't have a very long time in which to observe the Milky Way, but because of the position that we're in around the sun, we see it in the middle of the night. We can see it stretching across the sky here at about 1 o'clock. This is when Sagittarius is after rising. So the center of the Milky Way, the core of the nucleus, it's in between Sagittarius and Scorpius. And we talked about that a few months ago when we were looking at these constellations in morning time. But of course, that meant getting up, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, stay up a little bit past midnight. And if you're in a dark sky, you've got the glow of the Milky Way. Of course, the moon affects it. So we can see here on the 28th, when the moon is pretty much on the path of the Milky Way, it's going to be a little bit harder to see. And when it gets higher in the sky, as it will be tonight, that can make it a bit trickier to see as well. But if we move forward, the moon will set just a little bit before the sun really rises. So we can see a bit of the Milky Way there, 3 o'clock in the morning, if you are willing to get up early. But the thing is, here in summer, we don't have to stay up too late should we want to take a look at the Milky Way or the deep sky objects that are in and around it. Now, I will bring us forward a few days again just to keep the moon out of the way to give us the best possible view of these deep sky objects in and around Scorpius. These are the ones that we'll be able to see early. So there's a lot of nebulosity here. It's clouds of gas, and we can see that there's a few different types of nebulae. We've got this reddish, pinkish emission nebulae, which is being heated up by the light of this really bright hot star, Antares, this big red giant. It's quite a cool star, actually, compared to some of the blue ones, but it's hot enough to heat up this gas cloud, which then emits its own light. Whereas here, closer to what is now the claws of the scorpion, a crab, or that looks like it's just at the start of a fucus. But just up here, this is a reflection nebula. So we can see it's got this more bluish color because it's reflecting the light of the stars. It wouldn't really be too hot. And then these dark gas clouds, they're very dense. They're not being heated up. They're not reflecting that much light. They're just blocking out the light of the stars behind them. And if you remember from our Messier marathon, we've got a little globular cluster in there as well, just next to Antares. So these are some nice things that are now getting up at a time where we can easily see them. And we're starting to see things like the Sagittarius star field as well, just after midnight. And as we get later into the month and into next month, even a little before midnight. You do, of course, have to remember, you will need to wait for it to get reasonably dark, and you need to be in a darker part of the countryside. If we come back into the city, that's not going to be visible with the naked eye. However, Antares is, and that lovely red star is going to be pretty much on the same level as those deep sky objects, and of course the deep sky objects around it. So with a telescope, they are still visible from here in the city, and now we've come to the time of year where they're visible just a bit after midnight, so you don't have to wait until 4 or 5 in the morning. So I do hope you get a chance to take a look into the Milky Way, whether it's with your eyes in the countryside or with a telescope in the city, and hopefully you'll get a chance to catch Mercury before it disappears and start seeing Venus as it rises into the sky as well.